GTD after some audio issues that hopefully we've worked out and will definitely be worked out in the future. Welcome back. So it's another Tuesday. We're here. It's been an exciting weekend. A lot of sports, a lot of things to cover. We were both at sporting events. I was at Talladega. Had some really cool experiences. He was at the Swamp. Also had some really cool experiences. The weather got out of the way. Allowed them to play some ball. So a lot of exciting stuff. But let's just start breaking it down. We'll start at the big one. The biggest, the baddest there is. Talladega.
And also the literal biggest one ever.
Exactly. And if there was a track that the biggest one was going to be at, especially this season with all the records that have been broken, it was going to be Talladega. I mean, walking into the track on Sunday, you could just feel something was going to happen. And then, I didn't know that was going to be the cool thing that happened, but, obviously it sucks for all those teams out there. So Talladega happened. Ricky Stenhouse wins.
Yeah.
After what looked like was going to be a natural finish. And it's not like Talladega it's not like NASCAR threw a caution for some bullcrap reason.
How dare they throw a caution for the biggest wreck in NASCAR history?
Should have stayed green there. Should have stayed green. So another green-white checkered this year. I think there's been 13 or 14 overtime finishes this season, which is crazy.
82 of them at Nashville alone.
Exactly. 28 cars involved in the wreck, most ever. But before we move on to that, Ricky Stenhouse did end up winning in the green-white checkered. We'll rate the burnout. What you got?
I got a 7. I love the up against a wall. It was great stuff from Stenhouse there. And then climbing over the top of the fence, the fist pump to the crowd, sliding down the back of the flag stand. He was pumped. It was great to see. So it is a 7 for me.
I'm actually going to bump mine up to an 8. I have 7 written down, but I'm bumping up to an 8 just because you reminded me of all the extra stuff outside, extracurriculars outside of the car. But the burnout was really cool, and it was really cool. I mean, I was probably 30 feet away from it, so it was extremely cool for me. Just like obviously seeing burnouts in person is cool once again. Yeah. Car guy burnouts are awesome in person. So that was really cool. So I'm bumping up to an 8 just because of all the stuff he did outside, just how excited he was and all that. But let's go down to back to this wreck. So 28 cars taken out. The wreck happened in the front of the field. Most of your contenders were in the wreck. Let's break down what you saw.
So, first off, they're trying to go around the Todd father, Todd Gilliland, who was going a lap down on the bottom after receiving a penalty. And that bottom line, led by Cindric and Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano, started to go around it. And then as they passed Gilliland, it looked like they all had it worked out. And you see the camera following Gilliland back. And then all of a sudden, you see just everyone start to stack up at the top. And I was like, what's happening? And that was the start of the wreck. But it looked like Logano tried to get to Brad. And then when Brad got to Cindric was moving just to the outside a little bit as Brad hit him and just hit him at a bad angle and caused this all to kick off. Although one thing I do want to say about this wreck is as he spun backward, you saw the back of Austin Cindric's car start to lift.
That's what
and normally we've seen earlier this year with cars flipping so easily off that. NASCAR introduced the new aero stuff with the side rail, the rails at the top of the roof for this week, and after seeing Cindric's car, you could see that car wanted to flip, and it stayed down, and cars like Elliott and Logano, who spun across, those cars I think would have flipped in the past.
Elliott's car, his rear end got up too.
Absolutely great work from NASCAR for finding a solution to this and keeping the cars on the ground, because I know that was a huge point of emphasis, and it worked. So to see that at what was the biggest wreck in history, for that to work and not a single car really go airborne, I was really impressed with.
Yeah, especially on the backstretch of Talladega. And, I think I looked at one point, they're going well over 190. So they were carrying some speed yesterday, which is great to see. But now to something more exciting than cars just ending up in a junkyard, the four-wide racing.
Well, before we get to that, we got to talk about the damaged vehicle policy.
Okay, you want to talk about the DVP?
Yeah, so Josh Berry was interviewed after getting out of the carousel. I don't know if you saw that clip of Bob Pockris interviewing Josh Berry, but he was like, Josh, what happened? And Barry went on this rant with a couple words I cannot repeat in it, talking about how it's so dumb that cars are all on flat tires and no one can get out and they're all stuck. And then some weeks you can tow guys, some weeks you can't tow guys. Then Joey Logano was complaining about they can't drive out on flat tires. They're supposed to have the contraption that can lift the rear axle and the rear shocks, but there's nothing you can do if your front tires are flat and you can't steer. So a lot of drivers obviously hate the fact that you can't get this next-gen car out of crashes. And then we saw Josh Berry be taken out of a race a couple weeks ago because he was towed back to the pits. And this week, NASCAR decided that the playoff guys can be towed back to the pits, and it's fine. So there's no consistency. This rule needs to be changed somehow. it's not consistent right now. And for a rule, that's the main thing it needs to be, is consistent. And NASCAR,
black and white.
NASCAR can't seem to figure it out. And you have guys doing burnouts in the grass like 2 feet away from safety workers, which is completely unsafe, but they're trying desperately to get the car back to pit road because they don't want to be knocked out of the race. And I get you don't want lemons going 20 miles an hour on the track, but at some point, let the guys be pushed back to their pit box, towed back to their pit box, or even the garage, and let them repair these things. Because with next-gen cars, too, you can replace so much of them so easily. You can replace the toe links. You saw Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick. Those cars I both thought were destroyed. Reddick was able to get back in the race with the front of that car beat up as it was. So these cars are more repairable than they used to be, and I think the DVP is kind of outdated at this point.
Yeah, I think they've heard the fans, even the drivers. I mean, Ryan Blaney a few weeks ago had an issue with the DVP.
Yeah.
And I think they hear the feedback. And nothing's going to happen this year. It's still going to be up to NASCAR this year. But in the offseason, I think they're going to rework the DVP, and hopefully by Daytona, they'll have a decision and something that they can come out with and say, hey, it's going to be more textbook. Here's the rule. Like, if this happens to your car, you're done. We're towing you to the garage. You might as well get out of the car. You're done.
Yeah.
If it's more on this side, all right, we can tow you back, try to repair it. Good luck, right? So, I don't know. We'll see. But, once again, 4-wide racing in stage 1 for 30 laps almost, like around 30 laps.
Yes.
Incredible racing, insane. Props to the drivers for just being able to hold on to that and keep that moving parking lot still and chaotic but unchaotic as possible, because one, that's nuts, and two, just the ability to not turn anybody there. After time and time again, you saw cars kind of get loose.
Yeah, I have no idea how it was a wreck. Great skill from every single driver in that field, and normally at Talladega, if you see 4 wide, you maybe got 3 or 4 rows at the back with guys trying to make new lanes, but this was basically the entire pack. It was
nose to nose, dude.
Absolutely absurd. I saw people comparing it to the pace laps at Fontana. I remember they did the
4-wide salute.
Yeah, It was very reminiscent of that, just at about 190 miles an hour. So massive credit to everyone for keeping it straight during that. But in contrast, that was the end of the race, and a lot of people are like, well, if everyone went 4 wide earlier, why are you only going 2 wide for the win? We need 8 lap overtime because the cars can't get up to speed and everyone's 2 wide. No one's going for the win anymore. I just want to know your thoughts on that, because I know I have some opinions on this about why you weren't seeing 3 or 4 wide crazy at the end, but I want to hear what you think.
I think, especially after that big wreck, as far as contenders, you maybe had 8 to 10 cars that with no aero damage, no nothing, that were in contention there at the end. And I think they're just playing it safe. I think a few drivers are probably like, this won't be the only overtime here at Talladega. Someone's going to try something. I don't think it's a problem getting up to speed. You saw all day. The 12 is the greatest example of this while he was in the race. Whenever he was pushing Cindric at the end of stage 1, whenever he wanted to, he would just drive to the rear of that car. And I know he's got the whole pack behind him. He's got the draft in front of him. But he would just drive to the rear of that car. And when Ross Chastain got pushed out on the 4 wide, there was a few laps where he was up there. It didn't last super long, but it was enough to make your move, where he was alone. You had 4 wide behind him, and he's alone, picking and choosing which lane he wants to have the momentum carry him. So I think the 2 laps, not really a big deal, especially at Talladega. They're the longest 2 laps on the schedule. So I don't think the 2 laps is an issue. I just think drivers were kind of like, okay, like we'll wait for something to happen. Like, I think they were literally just waiting to the very end. And I believe if Busch doesn't pull out when he did and waits, if him and Byron go out, I think Byron wins that race. Because when he pulls out, that whole upper lane just kind of collapsed. And you saw even Byron with almost no one behind him, tandem drafting. The tandem drafting is back in NASCAR. You can do it with 2 cars. Byron would just get up to the back of Stenhouse and push Stenhouse to the win, right? I mean, that's what happened. If he maybe if he gets out before pushing Stenhouse, he wins the race. Maybe if he does that, he hits that brick wall of air and gets shot back like Busch did. But I think if Busch stays and that lane stays and they go out at the very end, I think whoever made the last move at a 1, I just think Busch made his move too early, and it was a result of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think the main point is, like you mentioned, there were, 10 cars left that could have won that race, and of those cars, 3 of them were playoff guys, in Bell, Larson, and Byron, who at that point I think were just like, let's not do anything stupid. You saw Byron is now advanced on points after that. So to see a pack of maybe 8 or 9 cars that are still fully functional and 3 of them have no desire to do anything crazy, I think that's really always what you were going to end up with at the end there. I will say I think it kicks off a lot more if Brad tries to block Ricky Stenhouse at a turn 4 on the last lap, and I understand why he didn't. He almost got back by him. I think just the run with Larson didn't build behind him quite enough to the end there. Whether that's because of Larson trying not to push a Ford to the lead, I don't know.
I don't think it's that. I think Larson, 1, was about to finish a super speedway race and wanted to actually finish it. And 2, he looks out his window and who does he see right next to him? His teammate, the 24. So he doesn't want to turn Keselowski into his teammate.
Yeah.
Because then you have that. So I think he was just, like, I don't think he wanted to push so hard. Because you saw it with Alex Bowman earlier. Alex Bowman just, he didn't door him because he did real bumper, but he just drove through Ryan Blaney, and that started the wreck at the end of stage 1.
Yeah. And
so he was just trying to avoid something like that.
It's just a perfect storm of there not being a lot of actual high-powered cars left in the running, and then of those are there, a lot of them don't want to take risks at that point. I think this is not something you're going to have to worry about every super speedway race by any means. This is just how this particular race ended.
Yeah, and then, so going into next week, we have the Roval. It's a cutoff race. So if you're in the bottom 4, you're done. We saw guys at Talladega have some bad days from the start. Daniel Suarez being one of those drivers. Did not have the greatest day, needed to have a good day. I'm not going to say he's in a must-win scenario because I don't think he is, by numbers.
By numbers he's not, but by logic he is.
Yeah, exactly. I think the only driver that's not in a must-win, that's off the bubble right now, is Joey Logano.
Yeah.
Minus 13, which is still a big gap, especially at a road course to make up. Minus 13 is not where you want to be.
Well, you say that, but I think if you're at the end of a stage at a road course, there is that opportunity for the strategy play. Do you want points or not?
Every playoff point, except maybe William Byron, he goes for the win because he's already locked in. But I think every driver is gonna stay out and get stage points.
I think Bell and Larson are gonna go for the win in this one. 57 and 52 clear.
I mean, yeah, maybe those guys. Larson, maybe. I don't know. It depends on the strategy, but everyone who's like Denny Hamlin down, 4th down, they're taking stage points. They're not even risking it.
I would argue that Logano might run in front of a few of these guys for the early part of the race. I don't know if he'll be there at the end, but Logano in the early part of a road course race here, if he gets up kind of near the front, I could see him running in front of a Denny Hamlin and Alex Bowman.
But let's talk about the playoffs right now. So here's where we are now. Joey Logano's 9th, minus 13. Daniel Suarez, 10th, minus 20. Austin Cindric, 11th, minus 29. And at minus 32, Chase Briscoe at 12th. Cindric, Briscoe, Suarez, must-win situation.
Yeah.
Do you think that happens?
I don't. I think the 4 that you see out right now are the 4 that are out after Charlotte.
I agree.
And what a disaster for Ford. Losing 3 of their 4 remaining playoff cars in 1 round, and
only 1 left. If this stays, there's only 1 guy left. And
with Blaney
champion of last year.
And talking about Cindric, he's got to just. I don't know how you bounce back from that crushing finish at Talladega, because at one point he was still, I think he was, it said like 12 to the good, even when he was running second up there next to Stenhouse, when Stenhouse would go by him, and to go from that position to basically 30 out and then a must win, that is rough. And this is a guy I really thought would move on to the round of 8, and he was in position to do so. I still expect him to run well here. They've brought solid cars all playoffs so far.
I think he runs the best at the Roval out of all the red playoff drivers.
I would agree with that. I think Cindric is a very underrated road course driver. He's solid at these places. I would say if I'm picking a guy from the bottom 4 to win, that's who I would go with.
I agree 100%.
Although never count out the devil magic of even year Joey Logano.
If one of those must-win drivers were to win, I do think it's Cindric. And Joey Logano, he's not in a must-win. If Reddick, Blaney, Elliott, really just Reddick and Elliott, if those guys get in a wreck, they're in trouble. If they get a lap down, they get stuck a lap down or something, maybe they try to flip a stage and go for the win at the end, which I'm probably not going to do.
So,
but they can get in trouble real quick.
With that said, who of your playoff drivers to the good right now, other than William Byron, obviously, do you think has the best chance to be knocked out after this weekend?
I think it's hard to count. I know Reddick and Elliott are 7 and 8, and they're the closest to the red, but they're just so good at road courses. Now Chase Elliott hasn't really found it with the next gen car, but I do think this season he's run better in the next gen cars than he has previously, and just the season he's put together. So I think Bowman and Blaney are your 2 guys you may need to look out for.
I think it's Reddick. They were nowhere at Watkins Glen. The cars had no speed the entirety of the playoffs. there hasn't been a playoff race where 2311 has given Reddick a top 15 car. They've not had a top 15 car for a single race of the playoffs, including Kansas, where they're normally great at. He was awful at Watkins Glen, has really not been himself on road courses. I don't know what's going on with that team right now, but even as a Reddick fan, I think that is the driver most at risk, especially with the form Alex Bowman's on right now.
I think they kind of did, I don't know exactly what they did, but it feels like they took a similar approach to RFK, and it didn't work. I think they know that now, and I think they're gonna do something completely different than what they've been doing in the playoffs. But I also think Tyler Reddick in a cutoff race like this will outdrive the car, and I think Christopher Bell's a good example of this. Just winning in these cutoff races.
Yeah.
Even when his car wasn't the best, just rose to the occasion, outdrove the car, and got it done. I'm not saying he wins, but I think he outdrives. If he does have a bad car, I think he's good enough at road courses to outdrive it and overcome that. So I think Reddick's probably fine.
I think he's definitely capable of that. But what happens when you get a 2311 pit crew moment and he goes to 32nd?
Like Roval, though, I will say that Roval is probably the number one road course as far as passing. I think that plays more in the favor than with it being the Roval than Watkins Glen. If it's Watkins Glen, yeah, you're pretty much done. But I think the Roval kind of plays more hand in hand with that. But speaking of the Roval, first of all, we'll be there.
Yeah,
we'll be at the Roval, so that's exciting.
My fourth NASCAR race of the year in person.
I think it'll be my third, which is great.
It'll be your fourth as well because you went to both Atlanta races in Talladega.
Oh, that is true. Yeah. So four in 1 year. That's a new number for me. That's great.
Call us Wendy's. Got the 4 for 4.
4 for 4. But yeah, my first.
Cut that.
First time going to Charlotte. Who is your pick?
Well, here in the document, I have written down Tyler Reddick.
Well, I was curious about it because
I was like,
you just talked really bad about
it. I was thinking about it, and as much as I love him at road courses, and he is my favorite guy, I can't pick that car to win right now with the form that they're on. Give me Alex Bowman to win at the Roval. Yeah. This guy has been on the best form of anyone in the playoffs so far. Has a road course win at Chicago earlier this year. This is a guy that's really risen to the occasion in the playoffs, and he's starting to really drive pretty savvy the last few races as well. It's not old school Bowman, just the pace of the car is where he finishes. He's driving smart recently as well, so give me Bowman the showman to win at the Roval.
He was my Talladega pick, so I think Bowman's been doing great right now. I'm going Chase Elliott. I just talked about how he's gotten better and better at the next gen at road courses. He's got the Roval wins in his bag. And I'm going to be there, and I just really want to see him win a road course. So I think this is the first time I think I've let my bias show, like maybe the whole show, but I do actually. It's not that biased. I mean, it's hard not to go with an Elliott or Reddick at a road course, no matter how they've been doing.
I will say, shout out for Blaney. Blaney's had a rough couple of races, some DNFs, and he has won here before. He loves this place. I think he's an outside shot as well.
Yeah, he won here, but
don't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I was there. I don't want to relive it.
But yeah, so Blaney does technically have a win here. And yeah, so it was actually the inaugural race of the Roval.
It was.
So that was interesting.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm going Reddick. Or I'm going Elliott. You're going Bowman. So both Hendrick guys this weekend. But moving on to
and Kyle Larson wins. That reminds me. Fun stat. Since the Olympic break, no team has won more than one race. Since the Olympic break, a different organization has won each race, and one of the ones yet to do so is JGR. So if JGR wins this week, it will be another different organization to win in a row since the Olympic break.
And then we just need Spire to win.
Carson Hocevar.
Or Justin Haley. He could win.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Justin Haley finished 7th in a car that had no brakes at Talladega. You weren't watching the broadcast, so.
Brakes at Talladega.
But he couldn't get to pit road under green. Yeah. He got lapped a couple times because he had to stay out because he couldn't get to pit road because his brakes didn't work. And he still finished 7th.
Well, I mean,
still.
No, it's great. Yeah.
He avoided a wreck with no brakes.
Yeah, I just get to the wall and ride the wall.
As Daniel Hemrick tried to do.
Yeah.